yourself. Got the same soul in an old time rock and roll. Disco out on the floor. An old time rock and roll. I'm rock and roll. Well, welcome to the 25th episode of Shits and Giggles. My name's Al Burnell. I'm Matt's father. And with us today is Chris Barcelos, Brian's dad.
I thought we were here Brian and Matt.
Well, that's the trick.
That's the
trick. We'll find out. They may not notice.
Yeah,
they may not notice.
We definitely are the future.
Oh boy, it's grim. Anyway, where was I going? Oh yeah. It's been said that if you want to understand any era in history, you have to understand the era that preceded it. And like World War II, for example, if you want to understand how it happened, you have to understand World War I, the Treaty of Versailles, and so on and so on. But those of you youngsters, 20-year-olds, millennials and such that watch this show, get to look into history through Brian and Matt. You get to look at your parents' generation, how they grew up, TV shows they watched, world events that affected them, and so on and so forth. With Chris and I here today, we're gonna unpeel history a little bit and look back a little bit farther in history into Brian and Matt, and see what Chris and I grew up with, what we saw. We both came up post World War II. Grew up in a wonderful era, but we lived through the turbulent 60s and 70s, and into the era that Brian and Matt came into the world and grew up. So anyway, I was born in San Francisco, late 1945, grew up in San Bruno, California, graduated from high school in 1963. Chris, why don't you introduce yourself and we'll get going. We'll bring our earlier selves back on.
Well, I was born in California also, and that would be in South Bay Area in the Santa Clara Valley, the home of microchips and such. And grew up in a few years later. I was born in 1950, and I was born at the time television was born, really, when we really look at it. And then in 1964, I went for 2 years to a seminary, a high school seminary, and then came back, finished 2 years of high school, and graduated in '68. Went on to Santa Clara for a couple of years. During that time, like you say, everybody was all screwed up, wondering where they belonged in life. And I understand you actually went into the service at.
Well, yeah, I did. And it was courtesy of Uncle Sam. A couple of years, yeah.
See, I got in. The lucky thing for me is I got in on the lottery, and the lottery was, they picked your name by birthday, and in my situation, I came up 344. So we were going to be in all-out nuclear war before they got me, so I didn't really have to make a choice.
You were safe.
So I kind of was a spectator to the whole thing in the 60s because of that. So it'll be interesting to talk about it a little more as we go along.
Well, yeah, it was an interesting time. Your choices were kind of limited, but maybe we'll talk about it some more later. But when I got a draft notice, it wasn't like I had a choice. There was a bunch of brave men and ahead of me, and I stood on their shoulders. I said, well, I need to do my turn. So scared to death, yeah, you bet, but did what I needed to do. And so what town did you grow up in, Southern?
Well, it's San Martin, Morgan Hill area, Gilroy,
Yeah, beautiful area. Yeah. Totally different then than it is now.
Well, we were country, you were city.
Yeah, well, it's funny. The city of San Bruno. You drive down the peninsula now; it's one contiguous.
Sorry, Charlotte.
Area. Back then, it was all pretty well built up, but there were spots in between towns, And as a kid, there were behind my buddy's house, Reuben, there were cows grazing out there. And a lot of the land the airport's on, we'd go out and shoot birds, play cowboys and Indians, do whatever, ride our bikes. So it was more open space, and it was, and we had a lot more freedom too.
Yeah,
We'll talk about that as the show comes up.
Of course, I grew up on a dairy farm, so we had plenty of cows, plenty of cow shit, and plenty of kids in the family too. I grew up with a family of 8, so that's where I come from.
Well, I'm tracking them all down on the Facebook posts.
Yeah.
The names show up, but I don't know.
There are some commies and some right-wingers there in that group.
A future show could be just you and Dale.
Yeah, that would be a shot. We got some introductions to make.
Well,
here?
yeah, I think ourselves from an earlier era are here. So if you two want to come in.
Yeah, there won't be music until later.
I'll
bring back the Johnny Carson
with
music.
the March of the Clowns?
Dun, 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 dun.
This is a weird seat. Hi, Brian. I'm not used to sitting this close to you.
Yeah, that's weird.
Hi, future me.
Well, welcome to our show.
Well, that was an interesting introduction.
So before we start, though, and get into everything else, I just want to say one thing to Matt. You are 100% correct, and I hate being wrong.
What?
But Gavin was kicked off of CRT
Was he?
yesterday. So,
Yeah.
Really? I didn't know that.
They removed him
Dude, you know what? I don't.
late Saturday night.
I hate to jump it off topic, but I hate Glenn Beck now.
Yeah, no,
I don't like him.
I let Glenn Beck and CRTV and Blaze know how I felt about him last night. So it's,
Compound Media, folks.
hopefully that's where Gavin will end up, because they've Glenn Beck has just completely silenced Gavin now.
There it is.
I mean,
it's because he has his conservative.
Yeah,
Anyway,
he's a never Trumper.
This is their show.
Yes, sorry about that, guys.
How often do guests just jump on and decide to take over a show?
Yeah, we got these actors to come in and portray us 25 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
We were
Yeah.
we were special people back then. We saved the world, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. In fact, my buddies, and the man has a picture of me and 3 of my buddies together when we were in the service. And during that time, the United States was not attacked. We were safe. We were safe.
Aren't you guys considered the greatest generation's biggest mistake?
Probably.
That was the greatest generation getting their rocks off coming back from Europe.
Although, I am not a baby boomer. Chris is a baby boomer. I'm not a baby boomer.
yeah.
So the cutoff line, I'm December 45. So that was just prior to the baby boomers. But we all kind of merged into one amorphous pile
It's
later.
like my daughter falls just outside that millennial range, which is good.
Yeah.
So she's still got a chance.
Yeah.
So my question about this is who's we blame for this moment that we're in now? Was it the greatest generation? Was it the baby boomers?
I've always wondered that, because what happened in 67, 68, there's something I have to think. There was such a large amount of sacrifice made during World War II that I don't know. I mean, did they just were kind of loosey-goosey with raising their kids? I mean, I know my grandparents, they seemed not strict, but good parents.
Well, I think what happened was TV. Walter Cronkite
Yeah.
and the beginning of commentary on TV.
So it's technology, once again, which has caused the problem with millennials and the other generation, my daughter's generation, and technology has really just kind of caused some issues.
Yeah,
I mean, it's helped, but it's also been a problem, and the problem is we haven't managed technology in the right direction. I think partly that's part of the problem.
Well,
it's not all the problem; it's parenting too.
Part of it too is I look back at the era prior to Kennedy getting killed.
Right.
There was no. It was a good thing to be an American that we could do no wrong. There wasn't anything that we couldn't.
Get him up on the mic.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything that
There you
we
go.
couldn't do. In fact, going to the moon, he started it. But when Kennedy was killed, faith in our institutions and our government began to wane. It was all over TV. His funeral, Warren Commission, all the conspiracy theories that went out, and you saw faith and confidence in our government just being ripped away. Enter the drug culture, and drugs, rock and roll,
Sex, drugs, rock and roll.
all that stuff, and then counterculture stuff. So you began to see an erosion of the faith in our government and in America. Then rolls in the Vietnam War that dragged on and on and on and on, and which we could have paved that son of a bitch in 6 months if they turned him loose. But anyway, so that dragged things down. And Chris, you mentioned it. We all lived under the fear of being drafted. You know, you caught a lucky lottery number. Me, I was a radio repairman in Thailand. How hard was that? The only shots I feared was penicillin.
I did not have that experience.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
But we were called on, you know, and I mentioned this earlier. We stand on the shoulders of the guys that went before us, and yeah, one of them, Patton. So you couldn't say no.
Jefferson.
So we had to go. We went.
Franklin.
So you went. And so for a long time I said, well, yeah, I had it easy. And well, what the hell? I would have done anything was asked of me.
Well, the point is you served.
Well, yeah, and it was 2 years out of my life. You know, well, actually more than that. It was actually 3 years because the whole entire year preceding it, you know, when's that notice going to come?
Well,
So,
Right.
to me, there was a bit of a guilt trip for years about it. You know, when people started coming back from Vietnam and the war was finally over and you guys were getting to spit on, here I was. I never had to make a decision one way or the other. Some of our friends were going off to Canada and that kind of thing. And I never had to really make a grown-up decision about it because my birthday made the decision for me. So I was a little, you know, for many years I was concerned about it. Now my brother, he had told me, don't go into service if you can avoid it. Of course, he denies that today. He says he's a big vet, but
Which is that Dale?
Dale, yeah, Dale, yeah, but the thing about it is you know, you heard from both sides. You had heard people during that time say, avoid it, get away from it, and the other side of you is saying, wow, I should do something for my country. But I didn't think that going through a jungle with bullets whizzing by me was maybe the right thing. So I was lucky I didn't have to make the decision. But, you know, we go back to what you talked about at the beginning of the 60s. Probably the first thing we saw on TV that was of major importance, other than Dwight, you know, D. Eisenhower on TV and stuff like that, was probably the debate between Kennedy and Nixon. And during that time, my parents, they were good Catholics and they were supporting Kennedy. They later become very conservative Republicans, but they were supporting Kennedy. And I can remember during the debate, everybody saying, "Oh, he got smeared," and he looked horrible on TV. He had this kind of 5 o'clock shadow.
Nixon looked awful.
Yeah.
He had the flu, right?
I don't know.
Yeah,
But anyway,
it's weird that I go back and watch the Kennedy-Nixon debates, but that's just because the kind of weirdo that I am, that I like to look at stuff like that. But from what I understand, Nixon had the flu.
Kennedy obviously had it changed everything there with that TV persona.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
when do you think, though, the split, because it wasn't always this bad between the Democrats and Republicans, right? I mean, did this start after McCarthyism, or I mean, when they were attacked, when one side was going after the other one? Because it seems like it's nonstop since I can remember. I mean, they've been.
Do you remember McCarthy hearings at all?
Didn't pay much attention to it. I've read more about it since. I mean, because while that was going on, how old was I? What was I interested in? Some old time rock and roll,
And
little beer on the weekends.
It's the same
girls.
thing teenagers are still after
Yeah,
today.
I mean,
Yeah.
I just really wasn't paying attention at that time. But
The big thing that I saw, in retrospect, because during McCarthy, I think it was in 55, 56, 57, the big thing I saw, seeing in retrospect, is his group, they were anti-communist. Nixon was one of them. They were all out to try to stop what they saw that was going to happen in this country, and that was the takeover of a lot of the things in this country, and it's happened. It's
The
really,
institution.
it's not. I'm not saying communists did it, but the liberal theory, the liberal ideal,
They're communists.
started
Yeah.
started pushing their way in, and especially into our schools, which we have completely, our colleges, we've completely abandoned as conservatives.
When you
So, what, oh, sorry.
when you look at how it's like post McCarthy, post Vietnam, or it seems like anything Khrushchev was saying was going to happen has actually happened. When you look in Berkeley now, especially like Ben Shapiro will go start talking, there's open communist teaching and open communists there. It's everything Khrushchev said was going to happen, that it would come from the inside.
We got open communists running for office.
Yeah, and it seems that they got their foothold in academia.
Well, do you really?
Don't worry,
Sorry
I do
about
it all
that.
the time.
Pop
But
it
usually it's because I'm drinking.
So yeah, so
Yeah,
I mean, Al,
Scotch.
your view of this. Do you really think that communism was what Russia was all about? Because I don't. I think Russia was just using it as a way to support their dictatorship. I think communism and liberalism and socialism, as it's being taught today, is a way to, take over the government in a little different manner, and that is make the people depend on us, and we'll hold power forever.
Well, we haven't practiced this, but the nature of man hasn't changed ever. And right now I'm reading the Old Testament, tough sledding, but it's a lot of insight into what mankind's about. And I agree with you. There's no love for communism or any other ism. It's a path to power and control, and that's what it's all about. And you go back a few hundred years ago, and if you wanted power or control, you were either in the military or you were in the clergy, and to get into the political class, to gain power. That's how all the corruption in the Catholic Church took place. But people haven't changed, so it's all about power. But where did things change? I think that period there after Kennedy died, and we talked a little bit about the erosion of the faith in the government and our institutions. A lot of the kids that came up in that era believing that crap and rebelling and everything moved into academia.
Right.
They went into safe, like public service, not to denigrate any kind of government employees, because I know a few tax suckers, but that's another story. But that's who is in Congress now, in our state legislature, and it runs our colleges. Now they're tenured professors.
I've seen this with teachers too. They really like to throw, "Oh no, I'm a government servant." They treat being a teacher, their chosen profession, as if they're doing some great sacrifice for society.
Yeah.
Well,
And it's like, well, then don't complain about your pay. You chose that career.
They've also now made themselves. They think that they're on the same par with the military.
Right.
They've actually said that they should be called heroes also, and
Yeah.
it's like
No.
no.
Yeah, no.
Well, I think it's a new religion to me.
I think, yeah.
They're the new clergy, and they are the ones now that are saying, you can't do this, you can do this, you can't. There's a new 10 Commandments out, and God, if you can figure out what it is, because it changes daily.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, that's racist,
Oh yeah, for sure.
homophobe.
When you guys, it's odd because you guys, from the way we look at it, a lot of the dads or uncles or people around you, your teachers and stuff, were World War II vets. And not all of them were combat vets, but all of them served. And the more we learn about combat, it's not, the World War II generation didn't go in there as flag waving and why they were in Anzio thinking about the flag and thinking about their country. They were thinking about their buddy. But in the grander scheme of things, they all sacrificed. There was a sacrifice all of them gave. And that was imparted on you, I'm sure. And then also through early television and radio that you listened to. It's odd to me that in that 10-year split from, let's say, early 60s when you guys came up when you were young, riding bikes, playing cowboys and Indians, like you said, cowboys and Indians, now our kids would be sent home if they didn't call them white nationalists versus native indigenous people.
Yeah.
And if the Indians didn't win. But it's weird that within like a 5-6 year shift, that the culture changed. Well, and that's what I get from seeing media, and it blows me away that an entire culture could move that much. And I guess it didn't move as fast as maybe a show on the 60s would show you. I doubt people in Abilene, Kansas were all of a sudden buying into the hippie movement and the anti-American movement. But it certainly was happening where you guys were growing up in the Bay Area. Now,
not in Morgan Hill.
it pretty much just
It
stayed.
was Haight-Ashbury and Berkeley and the colleges out in the public, in general public out there, even at kind of conservative Santa Clara. There wasn't that much going on. There was some, but most of it was pretty quiet until the last year I finished. I finished in 1970. There were riots going on and things going on, and I had decided that I wasn't going to do any more. I can remember everything was so confusing that the school itself decided if you want to withdraw from any of your classes, you can do it up to the day of finals.
Wow.
Wow.
So I went into a statistics class not knowing what the hell I had seen for the last 3 months, and I just wrote down one thing, walked out and said, I'm withdrawing.
Well, so it sounds to me that those are the people that that have taught the teachers of now.
Right.
Because now the teachers of now are doing the same thing. They're just, did you get sensitive because there was a banana peel in a tree?
Yeah.
Oh, no one should take a test today.
Well, I can see, Matt, where you're coming from, but I don't think the culture has completely changed that much. And that's the dichotomy. We're a split country. There's no question about it. But everything we see on the radio, TV, movies, books, whatever, is you would lead you to think we're all going down this same road, and we've lost, and it's done, and America's over. And I don't believe it is, and I think that's a lot of pushback going on right now, and that's what Trump won.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's because most of what you see on TV is from the liberal left, and
Exactly.
that's who controls TV. But the percentage, I don't think the percentage, liberal left percentage, it is not near as much as the conservative right is. I don't think. I think they are a much smaller.
They're just louder.
They're a smaller minority. They're just louder, right?
They control the media.
Yeah.
They control the media.
Yeah.
Social media
So it makes everybody think that, oh, well, this is what everybody thinks.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it's actually not
Yeah,
what everybody
well, there must be something wrong with me because I'm not getting along with it, so I won't speak up when somebody's talking bullshit. So, yeah, but now people are speaking up. Lots is going on, folks, in Paris and in Europe, in Poland, in Hungary, Czech Republic. Italy now is not letting the ships land with the people coming in from Libya or Bumfuckistan. Or wherever they're from.
Hey, you're going to get beat.
You're going to get a fart noise.
Look, the only person to drop the F-bomb.
So
He's the guy that tells us not to swear. You did it.
Yeah.
Did I just say fuck?
Oh, there you go.
Well, you got to remember, I'm you in the future.
Oh,
so old habits die hard. But people are standing up and saying, no, I can't. If I'm quiet and just wring my hands, I'm just going to get more of the same. No, we need to stand up.
That's the Republican Party right now.
Yeah. Well,
they just sit there and hide in the back. And, oh, we got to be nice. We can't do this. We can't do that. It's like that. That's our problem right now. The Republican Party needs to go away.
That's the one encouraging thing I think about the modern or our generation conservative is, and like you opened the show and it was a big deal to you and it's a big deal to me, people like Gavin McInnes being removed from platforms. And the split between the old GOP or old conservatives, the new conservatives, people like Gavin McInnes, Anthony Cumia, what's his name from InfoWars, Alex Jones.
Yeah.
We're no longer being the polite conservative.
Right.
We're being I just read a book from Mike Cernovich, I think his name is something like that, called The Militant Normal. And it's a great book, and it's about our generation of conservatives where you're seeing the Paul Ryans and it, like everybody hand-wringing over H.W. dying. Wow, he was so polite. Well, the one thing that drove us crazy about H.W. and W is that he did not defend himself. They thought that that their deeds would say enough for themselves. And the fact is, it's not. When you have a 24/7 media cycle that says that that we're all racist and we don't defend ourselves, people will start to believe it. And that the one encouraging thing about conservatism now is we're starting to speak up, and we're not portraying ourselves as lily white, have living clean lives. Gavin McInnes in his books and stuff like that is very open about his early drug use, alcoholism, partying, whoring around. But then once he got to his late 30s, realized that the proper way to live is to raise a family, stop using drugs. And it comes down to one of the things that I think conservatives embrace is self-control, responsibility. Where we'll see liberals believe that there should be a consequence-free lifestyle and nobody should judge. And we're seeing, well, when you have to raise kids, you need to worry about consequences. Judgment is not a bad thing. So, but I don't know. There's my rant.
Well,
let's take a quick little break.
okay.
And I have some camera and lighting issues to fix, and we'll be right back.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 6, 8, 9,
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
These are the stakes. To make a world in which all of God's children can live, or to go into the dark. We must either love each other, or we must die.
Vote for President Johnson on November 3rd. The stakes are too high for you to stay home.
That was a great commercial from our era coming up. And what a crossroads it was between Johnson and Goldwater.
Well, what Matt was talking about was how the right kind of just went down in these little muted tones. Well, when that commercial came out and accused Goldwater of wanting to blow up the world, basically, Republicans just kind of went. They disappeared. They didn't support him. All the Republicans just didn't want to get involved in it. Didn't want to talk about it, and they all felt this like, yeah, they're right. These people are making some sense because they're telling us that we got to be more of a, less active in standing up against communism and such. So that's what I think that was one of the beginnings of one of the of the Republican Party hiding under desks for the the
Yeah,
next
yeah.
30 or 40 years.
Let's not offend anybody.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we have to be kinder and gentler. Where'd we hear that? Yeah, and get our asses kicked, and then we'll get praised for that. Yeah, until Reagan came along,
Reagan, and then
he shook it up,
then
and now we got Trump. And you know what? I like his tweets. People that don't like his tweets, the hell with you. I like being talked directly to instead of through the filter of ABC, CBS, MSM, and all of that. No, I like it. And we need more Republicans, or not Republicans, people with balls, honest politicians, people with honor, and have respect for the country and the institutions, and instead of the crap that we're getting. I mean,
what did I call her last week? I said we're no longer Republicans. We're
realists.
Realists.
Yeah.
That's what it needs to be.
People that are living in reality.
It's
Thank you.
time to. They say that the Democratic Party is at its destruction. I think the Republican Party is actually at its destruction right now.
But it's being replaced.
Yeah, it is being
with proactive. If you look, I can't remember the name of his name. That cool Navy SEAL dude that won wearing an eye patch.
Right.
And
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
That's the that's the future of the Republican Party, or it's
and Jordan.
But is it the
Jim Jordan's
Jim Jordan?
Is it the Republican Party, or is it a central party that we really need? Because we got these extremes on both sides that seem to be driving the argument right now. I actually looked at Trump as being central.
He is
center.
He's more of a centralist.
He is, actually.
And I actually looked at him as going up against both sides of this what they used to call it, the establishment.
Yeah, the establishment. Yeah,
we were always against in the 60s.
Yeah.
We were against the establishment.
Down with the establishment.
Hey, brother, bring down the establishment. Let's get it. And this establishment, this deep state, because they're on both sides. They're saying we got our little power area here, and we're going to run things. I actually want to see Trump create a third party for 2020.
Well, I think you're seeing that though right now. I think there is, because you do have the extreme left, and the extreme right. I think Glenn Beck is part of it. I think the Never Trumpers are the extreme left.
It's weird because I've been trying to define what the extreme right is.
I
You know what the left wants us to.
I think it's Never Trumpers.
Yeah, it's the Jeff Flakes,
Yep.
the stuff like that. But as an ideology, they're not right wing.
Right, and that's not what we're looking at. I don't think this is an ideology.
Because you hear that in French. Well, the extreme left and the extreme right are driving these people. And I was like, what is extreme right?
Well, you're not going to like this, but I actually agree with Glenn Beck, his analysis of the left and right. It makes sense. The left, far left being anarchy, the far right being totalitarianism.
Glenn Beck's got you under his power right now.
Well, he has lucid moments once in a while.
He does.
I
used to
love to watch that guy, and then he's lost me though. He really has.
He's losing me now too. But I like that explanation because it's not what we've been taught. What we've been taught and what gets drummed through the media is if you're a conservative, you're a right-winger.
Right.
No, not really. No, you lean toward, you're somewhere in the middle, like the centrist, like Chris just said, and you're for freedom and rights, and you're against totalitarianism and anarchy.
On either side.
And too much of in Congress and in the state too, it's career politicians. They're in it for themselves.
They're
crooks.
Yeah,
it's greed.
We're not going to fix it. We're not going to fix this until we can get enough people in there to tell in Congress that will go, look, we need a term limit. Because these guys, they need to be term limited. They cannot no longer control the government for what is Pelosi at almost 40 years now that she's been in there.
Yeah.
I mean, Barbara Boxer was in there for 30-something years, and Feinstein's been over 30 years.
Yeah.
Well, now you're talking about
have
the
people,
crypt keeper.
You cannot have people making decisions for the government for that long.
No.
Because they become an
apparatchik.
It's been what we fought for to get rid of the British.
That's true. It becomes almost like a
Like a monarchy.
a caste system of a
Yeah.
monarchy, but it just with multiple people. Would you guys say, going back to the early '60s, because most of your parents, I don't know about your parents, Chris, but I think I know my grandparents. Almost everybody was an FDR Democrat coming out of World War II. And so, you take on the politics of your father. I learned my conservatism, in actually the coolest way. Well, to me, Ronald Reagan was like my other grandfather. He was the only president I knew. I don't remember Gerald Ford or Jimmy Carter at all. I grew up with Ronald Reagan, and he spoke to me. And our first national tragedy, I think, that we had growing up was the space shuttle blowing up, the Challenger. And even in Ronald Reagan's final address, he addressed us as children to talk to our parents and think. When did you guys start to awaken to the Democratic Party isn't what I've been sold, or it's not what my parents' generation thought it was? When did that happen? When did you? Because that's kind of a political awakening. Splitting away from your parents politically is kind of a big thing.
Well, I told you about. I felt sorry for Nixon, and I always was more of a feeling about politics type of person, and I actually, in 1960, felt sorry for the guy, and I said, I'm rooting for you. But that was just purely kid stuff.
Right.
Okay. Later on, I was a registered Democrat till 2 years ago.
Oh, really?
Right.
Yeah.
No shit.
This is why I call him a Democrat all the time.
But I never voted Democrat that whole time. I kept waiting for the Democrat on
He
the
was
white
mad with the
horse
Republicans.
to write in.
I can see that.
And
If
I
it
wasn't
was-
looking for a Kennedy. I wasn't looking for someone like that. I was looking for someone that's firm, cared about people, and come in. I didn't like the idea that the Republican Party seemed to have a very heavily oriented power structure with the big people. But as time went on, I voted Republican. I always voted that way. Reagan, Bush. No, Bush won. But in 1992,
He did what everybody did.
I did what
Ross Perot?
19% of the country did. I thought the thing was such a mess. I said, I'm voting for Ross Perot.
I can see why people did it.
Yeah.
And that's, yeah,
Because it's the same reason why people voted for Trump.
Yeah.
exactly.
I did, you talking about Reagan was, I didn't really have a skin in the game for politics until probably after 92. So the next was 96 election.
Yeah.
And that was where that was my first time I ever voted.
Was that Kemp Dole, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, it was Kemp Dole.
And Perot ran also on that one.
An inspiring candidate, that Dole.
And I voted for Perot in that one also. That was, or we wrote him in or something like that because he was knocked out again because he couldn't.
Yeah, he didn't make the ballot or whatever.
So it's like I didn't know what I was doing that first time I went to vote. That was my first chance to vote. I didn't get to vote in '92 because my birthday was December 31st, so I wasn't old enough to vote in '92.
And now they want to bring the age down to 16. Oh,
That's
boy.
a
Yeah.
joke. But
Wild in the Streets. Remember the movie?
Yeah. Yeah.
But-
Remember the movie, The Wild in the Streets? They were the kids they dropped the voting age to 24 or something like that, and they took over the country. And then they said people over 35 couldn't vote, and then pretty soon in the same movie, at the end of the movie, when the 24-year-olds were running the country and they were killing everybody off, the 16-year-olds started meeting out there. Hey, we got to take over this country.
That's
Yeah,
funny.
yeah.
so '96 I voted, and I go in and I vote, and at this point I'm married, and I'm like, and I'm working, I'm realizing taxes are a thing, and you're starting to see that I smoked at the time, and this is the first cigarette tax that came in, right? It was '96, and I went in there and I voted. And I voted no for that cigarette tax, and I went home and talked to my wife, and she goes, "I voted for it." And I'm just like, are you fucking stupid? What are you doing?
And then the
I
fight
have to buy
started.
cereal. She goes, I don't care. It's for the children. I'm like,
Yeah, it's for the
"Duh,
children." You know what
didn't
else
have
they did
just
for the
yet.
children? Waco was for the children.
Yeah,
How did that
yeah.
work out?
So that was my turn from, because before that I was all about, the government needs to give me everything. It's like, and I was seriously in high school. I was like, why shouldn't I? I mean, if I'm paying taxes, why shouldn't I get it? But then I realized that was a turning moment for me. I think it's just before I had my daughter, was like, no, that's my money.
Yeah.
You don't get to tell me what you're going to do with that. And that cigarette tax, they took somebody that probably could have been either not a Democrat, but somebody that's
Independent,
and fell into the Democrat side on a lot of voting. And that cigarette tax pushed me to the right. I mean, and that started me on my journey to where I am now.
My folks really weren't political. They were FDR Democrats. Although I remember in 52 being at dinner at a friend's house of theirs, and they were in it's Eisenhower-Stevenson election in 52, and I remember them arguing about that. And my dad's buddy says, "Yeah, I can't vote for Eichenstein." He called him, and my mom and dad were, well, he's good, general, and anyway, but they really weren't political. So, but I registered as a Democrat, and until I went to work and started seeing what was coming out of my check, and then march on forward to see the reception in '67 we got when we came home from I didn't come home from Vietnam. I didn't go to Vietnam, but when we came home, and the way they treated veterans, and I thought, no, this is not the party I signed up to be in, and this is not the party my folks would have supported. And I couldn't go Republican because it was all those fat cat rich bastards. So I became a libertarian, listening to Jim Eason on the radio. And then later I figured, well, those guys are not going anywhere. And along comes Reagan, and that was my conversion. And then my interest into politics, for a while there, I used to watch C-SPAN every morning. Did something happen?
No, we're good.
Oh, we're good. I don't know what that was.
So anyway, it was a process, though. But it wasn't. My folks would be appalled, and my father-in-law, Abby, would have been appalled at the modern Democrat Party, and they're off the rails.
Well, we grew
Insane.
up. Yeah, we grew up. I never had a choice, obviously, with him as my dad. Although, I mean, you never told me like we're Republicans or anything like that, but just the family I grew up in, and which was normal.
You are watching a demonstration of the most authentic cap pistol in the world. It has exclusive fanning action and shoots safe shooting shells with greeny stickum caps. The gun and hip-slung Mattel holster are specially made for a fast draw. All of Mattel's shooting shell fanners and holsters carry the true stamp of the Old West. And every boy will walk tall when he wears a holster and pistol with a Mattel brand. You can tell it's Mattel. It's swell.
Oh, thanks, Dad. Set me up.
You should have had it like this. So it was like, yeah, there we go. Let's just start it like that. There you go.
Talking to the penis.
Just leave it. Leave it there. Come on.
You're
Go
insane.
ahead.
Did you like the spaceship?
The spaceship
dildo
penis? That was
flying
pretty
by you?
fucking
Yeah,
funny.
I like that.
By the way, this is something we would have never seen on anything.
We're not recording.
Where?
We lost all
Yeah,
that.
you are.
Oh, we are. I'm sorry.
What are you talking
We're
about?
going on.
What's your
We're going on 53 minutes already?
Well-
This is a two-parter.
But that was running a little while.
That's true.
Yeah, during the breaks.
But
and everything.
anyway,
Yeah, we're only running. Dude,
But
we
what-
haven't even run 30 minutes.
what did you say last, Matt? What were you saying?
I was saying, like, I didn't have a choice. Like, I remember going into the 92 election, which I could not vote in. thinking, this was prior to our trip to Washington, that, well, maybe Bill Clinton will be good, change can't be that bad of a thing, as it turns out. But then we went to Washington, D.C., and particularly we went to Yorktown, which for some reason, I've always been a big history buff, to see where the Revolutionary War was actually won. And you're like, wow, I'm standing on a battlefield where, like, the original patriots died was a big deal to me. And then going to Arlington. And I remember there, I really, really wanted, going to it, I really wanted to see John F. Kennedy's grave. But it was really the changing of the guards at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier that impacted. There was just too much that impacted me, that tapped into my just patriotism.
I guess.
And then growing up around old World War II vets and somewhere full of shit, like Kit, our neighbor.
Yeah.
But and I had Unc.
Yeah.
And Unc had that too old to serve.
Yeah.
Guilt. So he would sit and watch like Victory at Sea and stuff. And instead of growing up watching just Dukes of Hazzard, I had my great uncle would come over and we'd sit down damn near every Sunday.
Yeah.
And watch World War II documentaries. So there was always that. I always had that. So it was just set up for me to be a conservative.
Well, that's kind of interesting, Victory at Sea, because that's what basically we had on TV when we were kids, other than the new shows that were coming on. In the late afternoon or on Sundays, you could see Victory at Sea, 3 or 4 times a day. And that was very interesting for us. And also in the 60s, it was like everything about the military and about military service was heroic. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
John Wayne, Sands of Iwo Jima, all those movies. The first movie that kind of scared me in the 50s, I remember it was a movie with Richard Widmark, and it was something about the Chinese had a island in the Aleutians that they had taken over, and they were developing an atomic bomb there to attack the United States. And the end of the movie was
scaring the crap out of your population.
It was still a Red Scare.
And the end of the movie was a big bomb going off, and that was, the bomb scare was big for us in the 50s.
It was. And the duck and cover, get under the desk. Yeah. Oh boy.
Even for us though, in the 80s, when the day after came out,
they didn't let me watch it.
For some reason they let us watch shit like that. I mean, I watched Alien Covenant, or the original Alien, on TV, but it's like scared the crap out of me for 10 years. I hate that. I mean, Alien still scares me, but that the day after was it scared me, because we lived in Sacramento, and I live right next to Mather, which is a SAC base, and I find out a SAC base is Strategic Air Command. It's an actual target by Russia. They're gonna bomb. They're gonna shoot a missile at that, and I'm just like, this sucks.
Why is my mom and dad that got me living here? Is that what you're saying?
But we talked about earlier where things changed, and you're right, Chris. The movies, there was just not only TV, but there was the TV show Combat was big. Every movie about the military was patriotic, and we were the good guys, they were the bad guys. Even funny ones like Mother Goose with Cary Grant on an island, and
Little Baba Black Sheep.
Yeah, and they were all good. They were all good patriot. We could do no wrong, right? On the Beach was one too. That nuclear catastrophe, Apocalypse Now, all this stuff. McHale's Navy was patriotic, but it made fun of the military.
Yeah. So where do you think the first movie or the first media event was that we all of a sudden saw this? This is stupid military. Where we should be a. I was wondering if it's Catch-22. Oh yeah, Dr. Strangelove. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And Catch-22 was also a bad light in the military. Dr. Strangelove.
Where do you think you guys might be able to tell? Because like you said, you grow up watching it. The people around you were vets. And Democrats and Republicans were both very patriotic people. Where did the counterculture begin? That 67, 66 counterculture.
Timothy O'Leary.
Was it based in the drug?
It was the drug. It was the me generation. Our generation started this. Hey man, it's about me. It's not about our country. It's about me. We got to be out there and experience life, man. That's the way I kind of looked at it.
Yeah, there's a song. I'll be damned if I let him run my life. Or, what's that song?
I can't remember it right now.
Sunshine. Sunshine, go away today.
Oh, yeah.
Da, 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 da. Well, anyway, yeah, well, not to cast dispersions on baby boomers, Chris, but our parents' generation wanted us to have everything that they didn't have.
Right.
And they worked hard to do that for us. And I think a lot of baby boomers, therefore, became kind of entitled or didn't have the work ethic that the greatest generation had. We didn't have to. I mean, I didn't grow up rich. I mean, but we weren't poor.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a bike. I had toys.
Well, I just had 2 sticks.
Yeah.
That's what I always
They
tell
had
my
one pair of pants between the 8 of them.
No. We had 8 kids. Five of us boys were going to school at the same time, but we only had 4 pairs of pants.
Ah.
So one day a week, one of us had to go with a dress to school.
Hi, everybody. It's Matt Bernal, your favorite Shits and Giggles host. As you can see, it's Christmas time, which means I'm trying to do as little as possible. Tune in next week for the exciting conclusion of the Back to Future episode. Remember, we're doing this just for Shits and Giggles.